I never thought my sister Ivy would go this far. As the wife of a military commander, I was used to handling difficult situations, but nothing prepared me for what happened at our Christmas dinner. My husband Jackson had just returned from deployment, and we were excited to host our first holiday with our 8-month-old daughter Emma. I spent days preparing the perfect meal, determined to create beautiful memories. When Ivy arrived, I sensed something was off in her eyes, but I brushed it aside. Family is family, right? I had no idea how quickly our celebration would shatter into a nightmare. If you're watching this from a military family, please drop a comment below and hit subscribe. The support from this community has helped me through what happened next, when what should have been a joyful Christmas dinner turned into a nightmare. My relationship with Ivy has always been complicated. Growing up, she was 3 years older and seemed to resent my very existence. When I got a new bike for my 8th birthday, she punctured the tires the next day. When I made the cheerleading squad in high school, she spread rumors that I only got in because I flirted with the coach. Despite all this, I constantly sought her approval, making excuses for her behavior and blaming myself when things went wrong. Our parents always told me to be understanding because Ivy was just more sensitive. That pattern continued into adulthood. Every family gathering turned into the Ivy show. At Thanksgiving 2 years ago, she threw a glass of wine at her then-husband because he complimented my pumpkin pie. During our grandmother's funeral last spring, she caused a scene by accusing our cousin of wearing an inappropriate dress, which was simply not true. Her divorce 6 months ago only made things worse. She called me daily to vent, always blaming her ex-husband for everything. I listened patiently, offering support and validation even when she was clearly in the wrong. Jackson often suggested I set better boundaries, but I struggled with the idea of distancing myself from family. After all, she was going through a tough time. The Christmas dinner meant everything to me this year. Jackson had been deployed for 7 months and had only returned 3 weeks before the holidays. Emma was experiencing her first Christmas, and I wanted to make it magical. I spent weeks planning the perfect menu, decorating every corner of our home with twinkling lights and handmade ornaments, and carefully selecting gifts for everyone. Jackson helped whenever he could, assembling the new high chair for Emma and hanging the stockings above our fireplace. The night before, as we wrapped presents together, I expressed my hope that this Christmas would bring some healing to our family, especially for Ivy. "Just remember, babe," Jackson said as he taped a bow to a package. "Your priority is our family now. Emma and I need you more than Ivy does." I nodded, but deep down I still held on to the fantasy of a perfect family gathering where everyone got along. I should have known better. On Christmas Day, everything started beautifully. My parents arrived early, bearing gifts and kisses for Emma, who was dressed in an adorable red velvet dress with a tiny bow headband. Our cousin Taylor and her husband came next, followed by Jackson's brother and his wife. Everyone marveled at the decorations and the aroma of roast turkey filling our home. Ivy was supposed to arrive at 3 o'clock. By 4:15, she still had not shown up, and I was anxiously checking my phone while trying to keep the appetizers warm. When she finally walked in at 4:30, I could tell she had been drinking. Her eyes were slightly unfocused, and she gave me a too-tight hug that smelled of wine. "This place looks like a department store window," she said, looking around our living room. "Very commercial Christmas. I guess that is the American way." Jackson shot me a warning glance, but I ignored it. "Thanks for coming, Ivy. Can I get you some hot chocolate or coffee?" "Got anything stronger?" she asked, with a laugh that was a bit too loud. I guided her to the dining room, hoping food would help absorb whatever alcohol was already in her system. Throughout the appetizer course, Ivy made subtle digs about everything from our house to my parenting choices. When my mother complimented how well Emma was sleeping through the night, Ivy snorted. "Probably because she is so overscheduled, she is exhausted. Music classes and baby swimming at 8 months old. Let the poor child just be a baby." Jackson tensed beside me, his jaw tightening the way it does when he is containing his anger. He had taken 2 weeks of leave specifically to attend those baby classes with Emma, precious time for him to bond with the daughter he had missed for most of her life. "Emma loves those activities," he said evenly. "And they are good for her development." "Oh, the military man has opinions on child development now," Ivy replied with a smirk. "How interesting." My parents exchanged nervous glances but said nothing. They never confronted Ivy, always preferring to keep the peace at any cost. My father quickly changed the subject to safe territory, asking about everyone's plans for the new year. By the time we moved on to the main course, the tension in the room was palpable. Emma, who had been contentedly playing in her high chair, began to fuss. I placed a few small pieces of mashed potato on her tray, but she was more interested in throwing them than eating. Jackson made funny faces at her, temporarily distracting her while I carved the turkey. Ivy began telling a story about her recent promotion at work, speaking loudly to command everyone's attention. Just as she reached what was clearly supposed to be the impressive part of her story, Emma let out a particularly piercing cry. I stood up to check on her, but Ivy continued talking, raising her voice to be heard over Emma's cries. When Emma did not quiet down after a minute, Ivy paused mid-sentence, her annoyance evident. "Can you not control your child for 5 minutes?" she snapped. "Some of us are trying to have adult conversation." "She is just tired," I explained, lifting Emma from her high chair. "I will take her to the other room for a moment." But before I could reach her, Ivy suddenly pushed back her chair and strode over to Emma's high chair. What happened next seems almost unreal even now. Ivy leaned down toward Emma's face and said in a harsh whisper, "Be quiet." When Emma, frightened by this strange, angry face, cried even louder, Ivy did the unthinkable. She slapped my baby across her tiny cheek. The sound of that slap echoed through the dining room, followed by a moment of complete silence before Emma's wail filled the air. I lunged forward, snatching my baby from the high chair and cradling her against my chest. My entire body shook with rage and disbelief. "What is wrong with you?" I screamed, backing away from Ivy. "She is a baby, an innocent baby." Ivy rolled her eyes, returning to her seat as if nothing extraordinary had happened. "Stop being so dramatic. It was barely a tap. She needs to learn she cannot interrupt adults whenever she wants." I looked around the table, expecting everyone to be as horrified as I was. Instead, I saw downcast eyes and uncomfortable shifting. My mother was staring at her plate. My father was fiddling with his napkin. No one said a word. "Are you all serious right now?" I asked, my voice breaking. "She just hit my child and none of you have anything to say." "You are overreacting," Ivy said dismissively. "This is why your daughter is going to be so spoiled. You treat her like she is made of glass." I felt utterly betrayed. The family I had worked so hard to please, to keep together, to make happy, was sitting there in silence while my baby cried in pain against my shoulder. The realization hit me like a physical blow. They would never stand up for me or for Emma. That was when Jackson pushed his chair back slowly and stood up. The movement was controlled, deliberate, reminiscent of the calm precision he displayed in his military role. The dining room fell completely silent as he walked around the table, stopping directly in front of Ivy. "You just struck my child," he said, in a voice that was quiet but filled with authority. His eyes locked with hers, unwavering. A defenseless 8-month-old baby who cannot even understand what she did wrong. Ivy tried to interrupt, but Jackson held up his hand. "I have seen a lot of disturbing things in my career, but watching a grown woman hit an infant, then justify it, ranks among the worst." He paused, his expression deadly serious. "Get out of our house. Now." Ivy's mouth fell open in shock. "You cannot be serious. It was just a little slap to teach her some manners." "Tell him he is overreacting," she said, looking around the table for support. No one spoke. "Get out," Jackson repeated, his voice leaving no room for argument. "You are no longer welcome in our home or around our daughter. Ever." Ivy stood up, knocking over her wine glass in the process. The red liquid spread across our white tablecloth like blood. "This is ridiculous," she sputtered, looking to my parents. "Are you going to let him talk to me like this? In case you have forgotten, this is your daughter he is kicking out on Christmas." My mother made a small, distressed sound, but still said nothing. My father half rose from his chair, then sat back down when he met Jackson's gaze. "Fine," Ivy spat, grabbing her purse. "Enjoy your perfect little military family. You always were the favorite anyway," she added, glaring at me. "Always so sweet, so perfect. Well, good luck raising a brat who thinks she can scream whenever she wants attention." She stormed out, slamming our front door so hard that one of the Christmas wreaths fell to the floor. In the silence that followed, Emma's cries gradually subsided to hiccuping sobs as I gently rocked her. Jackson turned to the remaining guests. I apologize for the disruption, but I will not apologize for protecting my daughter. Anyone who has a problem with that is free to leave as well. No one moved. I took Emma to the nursery to check her cheek, which had a small red mark that broke my heart. I applied a cool cloth while whispering soothing words, fighting back my own tears. Jackson came in a few minutes later. "Everyone is still here," he said quietly. "Your mom is crying in the bathroom. Your dad asked if we could talk after dinner." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak without breaking down. "You do not have to go back out there if you do not want to." Jackson continued, sitting beside me on the nursery floor. "We can ask everyone to leave." "No," I said finally as Emma calmed down in my arms. "I want to finish Christmas dinner. I want to show Emma that one bad moment does not have to ruin everything. But I cannot pretend this did not happen." We returned to the dining room where an uncomfortable silence hung in the air. My mother had returned, her eyes red-rimmed. No one quite knew what to say. "Emma is okay," I announced, settling back in my chair with her on my lap. "But I want to be clear about something. What happened today was completely unacceptable. I am disappointed and hurt that none of you spoke up." My mother started to say something about family and forgiveness, but Jackson cut her off gently. "With all due respect, this is not about forgiveness right now. This is about protecting our child. That has to come before anyone's feelings, including Ivy's, and including yours." The rest of the dinner proceeded in a strained manner. We made awkward small talk about safe topics. My cousin Taylor tried valiantly to lift the mood by sharing funny stories from her job, and I was grateful for the effort. By the time we served dessert, some of the tension had dissipated, though the empty chair where Ivy had sat was a constant reminder of what had happened. After the last guest left around 9 o'clock, Jackson and I sat among the wreckage of our first family Christmas, surrounded by torn wrapping paper and half-empty glasses. "I am sorry about how things turned out," he said, pulling me close. "Do not apologize," I replied. "You did exactly what needed to be done. I just wish I had been the one to do it." The fallout from the Christmas incident was swift and far-reaching. The next morning, my phone was flooded with text messages and missed calls. My parents had sent a group message suggesting we all take a breath and remember the spirit of the season. My aunt had texted separately to say that while Ivy was wrong, perhaps Jackson had overreacted by asking her to leave on Christmas Day. Even my cousin Taylor, who had seemed supportive during dinner, sent a message saying, "Family is complicated, but still family at the end of the day." It felt like I was living in an alternate reality where slapping a baby was somehow a gray area. I showed the messages to Jackson, who simply shook his head. "They have been enabling her behavior for so long they cannot even see how wrong it was," he said. "But we know, and we are not going to let anyone make us doubt ourselves." 3 days after Christmas, my mother called to suggest a family meeting to clear the air. She proposed that Ivy apologize, and then we could all move forward as a family. When I told her I had no interest in Ivy's apology, she began to cry. "She is your sister," she insisted. "You cannot just cut her out of your life over one mistake." "It was not a mistake, Mom," I replied. "A mistake is dropping something or saying the wrong word." She deliberately hit my child, then defended her actions. "That is a choice, not a mistake." My mother switched tactics, mentioning how Ivy was struggling after her divorce and how the holidays are especially hard for her. I had heard this reasoning all my life, different versions of the same excuse: Ivy is having a hard time, so her behavior should be overlooked. "Emma is having a hard time too," I said firmly. "She was slapped across the face by her aunt and now has nightmares. Who is making excuses for her?" The pressure to reconcile continued throughout January. My father stopped by unannounced one evening, saying he missed his granddaughter and wanted to know when things would get back to normal. I invited him in to see Emma, but made it clear that our position had not changed. "Dad, I have spent my whole life walking on eggshells around Ivy, making excuses for her absorbing her cruelty so no one else had to deal with it. I cannot do it anymore, especially now that I have Emma to protect." He looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from one foot to the other as he watched Emma play with her blocks on the living room floor. "Your mother and I just want peace in the family," he said finally. "Peace at what cost? Dad, Emma's safety." her sense of security, teaching her that it is okay for adults to hurt her as long as they are family. That is too high a price. Meanwhile, Ivy had launched a campaign to paint herself as the victim. She posted vague social media updates about toxic family members and being cast out on Christmas. She called our extended family members, telling them a distorted version of events, where she had merely tapped Emma to stop her from throwing food, and Jackson had exploded at her with terrifying military aggression. Some relatives believed her. An uncle sent me a concerned message asking if Jackson had anger issues. A cousin suggested I might be suffering from postpartum depression, making me overprotective. It was infuriating to see how easily Ivy could manipulate people who were not there to witness what really happened. The worst came when Ivy showed up unannounced at the school where I taught part-time. I had returned to teaching 2 days a week while Jackson's mother watched Emma. Ivy stormed into my classroom during my lunch break, demanding to talk. "You need to call off your attack dog of a husband," she hissed when I reluctantly stepped into the hallway with her. "He has turned everyone against me." "Ivy, you need to leave," I said, keeping my voice low to avoid attracting attention. "This is my workplace. Not until you listen to reason," she insisted, her voice rising. "I have apologized. I have sent gifts for Emma. What more do you want from me?" "I want you to respect our boundaries," I replied. "We do not want gifts. We do not want apologies. We want space." When she refused to leave, I had to call security, creating exactly the kind of scene I had spent my life trying to avoid. That evening, Jackson and I discussed getting a restraining order. We started documenting every unwanted contact, from Ivy saving text messages and recording dates of incidents. It felt extreme, but her behavior was becoming increasingly erratic. The incident at my school was a turning point for my parents. My principal had called them out of concern, and they finally began to understand the seriousness of the situation. My mother called that night, her voice subdued. "We did not realize how far Ivy would go," she admitted. "We always thought if we just loved her enough, supported her enough, she would eventually mature. But she is 41 years old now and still behaving like a troubled teenager." It was the first acknowledgement from either of my parents that their approach to Ivy might have been wrong all along. A small crack in the foundation of denial they had built over decades. 2 weeks later, they asked to meet with Jackson and me without Emma present. We met at a neutral coffee shop where my father surprised me by starting the conversation. "We owe you both an apology," he said, his hands wrapped tightly around his coffee cup. "We should have spoken up at Christmas dinner. We should have protected Emma, and we should have supported you both afterward, instead of trying to smooth things over." My mother nodded, tears in her eyes. "We have been enabling Ivy's behavior for too long. We thought we were helping her, but we were just making everything worse." It was a watershed moment. For the first time, I did not feel like I was fighting this battle alone with only Jackson at my side. My parents were finally seeing the pattern that had dominated our family dynamics for decades. That night, as we discussed the meeting, Jackson pointed out something important. "This is not just about protecting Emma from Ivy," he said. "It is about breaking a cycle. If we had given in, if we had allowed Ivy back into our lives without real change, we would be teaching Emma the same lessons your parents taught you, that keeping the peace matters more than your own well-being." He was right. I had internalized those lessons so deeply that even when my own child was hurt, my first instinct had been to look around for validation before acting. I resolved then that Emma would grow up with a different understanding of family, that love includes boundaries, that respect is non-negotiable, and that her safety and well-being would always come first. The path to healing was not linear. There were difficult days when I questioned everything, wondering if I was being too harsh or unforgiving. The first family birthday celebration without Ivy felt strange. Holidays brought a mixture of relief and sadness. But gradually something remarkable happened. Without the constant drama Ivy brought to every gathering, our family interactions became more genuine and relaxed. I started seeing a therapist who specialized in family trauma. She helped me recognize patterns I had never questioned, like my tendency to take responsibility for other people's emotions and my deep-seated belief that I had to earn love through perfect behavior. These realizations were painful but liberating. "You spent your childhood walking on eggshells around your sister," my therapist observed during one session. "Now you get to create a home where Emma never has to do that." Jackson's military community became an unexpected source of support. Many of his colleagues had experience with family estrangement or setting difficult boundaries. One of his fellow officers shared how he had limited contact with his own brother after a similar incident. "Family is not just about blood," he told us during a backyard barbecue, as our children played together. "It is about who shows up for you in the right ways." Over time, those words proved true. We built stronger relationships with friends who respected our boundaries and valued our little family. We created new traditions for holidays that centered around what brought us joy rather than what fulfilled obligations. My parents, to their credit, continued their own journey of understanding, even attending family therapy sessions to address their enabling patterns. Emma, resilient as children often are, thrived in the stable, peaceful environment we created. By her first birthday, 4 months after the incident, she was walking, babbling, and filling our home with laughter. The red mark on her cheek had long since faded, but our determination to protect her never would. Ivy made a few more attempts to force her way back into our lives. She sent a tearful voice message on my birthday. She mailed a card when Emma turned 1. She even tried to enlist an old family friend as a mediator. Each time we calmly restated our boundary: no contact. It was hardest for my mother, who still harbored hopes of a reconciliation. "I just want both my daughters in my life," she said wistfully during a Sunday visit. "I understand that, Mom," I replied. "But wanting something does not make it healthy or possible. Ivy has not changed. She still believes she did nothing wrong." "I know," my mother admitted sadly. "I just wish things were different." "Me too," I said, and meant it. I did not enjoy being estranged from my sister. I did not celebrate the loss of that relationship. But I had learned that wishing for a healthy relationship with someone incapable of it was a path to endless heartbreak. By the time the next Christmas approached, we had found a new normal. We planned a small, intimate celebration at home, followed by dinner with my parents and a few close friends. Jackson's mother would join us from Arizona. There would be no tension, no walking on eggshells, no bracing for the next explosion. On Christmas Eve, as we placed presents under the tree while Emma slept soundly in her room, Jackson pulled me into his arms. "Proud of you," he said simply. "For what?" "For breaking the cycle. For showing Emma what healthy boundaries look like. For putting her first even when it was hard." I leaned into his embrace, thinking about how far we had come in a year. The pain had not disappeared entirely, but it had transformed into something else. Determination, clarity, and a bone-deep certainty that we had done the right thing. Family is not just who you are born to. It is who you choose and who chooses you back. It is built on respect, kindness, and safety. Sometimes protecting those you love means standing firm when every instinct tells you to give in for the sake of peace. Sometimes the family you build is stronger than the family you were given. As I watch Emma sleeping peacefully in her bed, I know with absolute certainty that she will grow up understanding her worth. She will know that she deserves to be treated with gentleness and respect. She will learn that love should never hurt, and that she never has to earn her place at the table, and that knowledge makes every difficult moment of this journey worthwhile. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family to protect yourself or your children? What helped you stay strong when others pressured you to give in? Share your experience in the comments below, and please subscribe if this story resonated with you. Your support means everything as we continue to share these difficult but important conversations. Thank you for being here, and I wish you and your family the peace and security everyone deserves.